Hey, what's going on? Welcome. Let's tell a quick story. I'm not even sure what story we're going to tell. This is an interesting one, I guess. There's no title yet. Uh, I just thought of someone from my old work, and I used to work in this. It it was called a subacute unit, and yeah, sub acute unit. What that is, or what it was, is it was people it was people who it was people who survived the ICU but ended up in a, for the most part, persistent vegetative state. um, that's how I would put it, I think. Is that it? um, yeah, so it was a lot of ventilators and a lot of peg tubes. All right. If you don't know what a peg tube is it's a tube that is implanted in your abdomen permanently that goes directly into your stomach, so that you could feed uh, enteral nutrition into a person's stomach through a bag, through a tube, like an IV. But instead of it going into the person's bloodstream, it's going through a tube directly into their stomach, because these people, many of them, are unable to swallow. So this is a crude map of what the unit used to look like. But this room right here, this first room to the right when you walked in, this is the nurse's station here. This is to the emergency room, and this is to the dining facility. this was um, this was a fun place to work. Now it was a depressing place to work, and it was a very hard place to work because this was a this was a 12-hour shift joint. This was a 7 to 7 joint. This was two shifts, which is a great gig. The reason why the shifts at this unit were set up like that is because it was attached to an emergency room. It was this little old hospital, and so this was part of one department, even though it's a completely different setup. As I'm explaining to you, these are this room that we're going to talk about. I don't know why I'm just going so long, because I want to talk about this person named Denise. And this room has 6 beds in it, which was the most beds in any of these rooms. Now, this was like a single. This was a single. This was a single. This was a single. And this was 4. Interesting. What a strange setup. And these rooms were weird too. Some of them were really, they were like these two over here had really strange bathroom setups with showers in them, and it was a very old building. This was like a building, like maybe, I don't know, the 20s or something. Anyway, 12-hour shifts, you guys. 7 to 7. So I'm a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. guy, full time. And that means that you're 3 on and 4 off. And then 4 on and then 3 off. And it just rotates the whole time. It rotates like this. So it means that you'll have 3 days of 12-hour shifts, right? And then you have 4 days in a row off. In a row, 4 days in a row off. And then 4 days in a row on of 12-hour shifts. Then 3 days in a row off. And then back to the 4 to 4. So it's a 3-4-4-3. And it's because this place is small, and because it's attached to this small emergency room. And it's an old archaic system that they have set up, but I loved it. It's like being able to be a nurse and a firefighter at the same time in a weird way. It's a great shift option. I think it's great, man. You just have to work your ass off. It helps if you live close to work, and it's a long friggin' day, bro. From 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and you're doing it 3 or 4 days in a row, but the pay is great, and the people were great. So in this room right here, so we had this split up into two sides, right? So there would be two nurses on this hall, and then a bunch of nursing assistants. I don't know, maybe like 6 nursing assistants, 3 on each side. So I would have this side of the hall, and then another nurse would have this side of the hall, and then there would be a charge nurse there at the desk. And so I had this side of the hall, but I had this side of the hall a lot as well. But over here in this bed right here, we had this really cool lady. And, her name was Denise, and she was in this. Not she wasn't vegetative. Okay, I'm gonna say no, she was not. Okay, her eyes were open, and she could blink, and she could smile, right? In this kind of crooked halfway smile. This goes into her neck. I don't know why it looks like it's at her mouth. It's not at her mouth. And very sad story. This is a young woman, probably in her mid-30s, that had been attacked by her boyfriend, and her boyfriend bashed her on the head with a dumbbell and like smashed the side of her head in. And then, she lost consciousness and stopped breathing, and was in the ICU for months and months and months. This is how it would go. She's in the ICU for months and months and months. She never came back fully. She could never get weaned off the ventilator. There's all these lines running in here, and there's all these monitors at all these beds and everything. These things, I got to look at these little numbers, and I got to turn these little dials and push these little buttons. Then I got to write it down in these books that I carry with me all the time and everywhere I go. And on a wheeled cart with all this stuff. Anyway, Denise, you can make her smile by singing, So, you guys know I like to sing, so I would sing her songs and stuff when I would go in there and do my thing, because I got to go in there, and check everything. Check all this stuff and suction her, right? Suction her trach and everything, so make sure she's getting enough air coming through the tube, and all of that, and check the peg tube and make sure she's got the food going in, and then you got to grind up her meds and mix them into this big thing called a Toomey syringe. It's this big giant, some people call it a Texas syringe, because it's this big giant syringe. At the end, it's got this thing right here. It's plastic, and it plugs into that tube that's in her stomach. And I gotta grind the pills up and then mix them into a liquid, sometimes with banana or something. And I gotta push that down into her tummy. And she was great. Super nice lady. And she's happy to see me. And she would make my day, even though she couldn't say or do anything. She couldn't move anything. She couldn't blink to communicate. She could control her eyes sort of and move her eyes. She just didn't have the ability to control them, I don't think. She tried, and she definitely smiled Um, Also, we had this other lady, and her name was Cheryl, and she was like the opposite of Denise, in that Denise pretty much laid almost flat in bed all of the time. But Cheryl, she didn't ever want to lay flat in bed all the time. She was always sitting up. She had these glasses that looked like this. They were very thick. It made her eyes look really big. She loved Garfield. She really loved Garfield. So she was developmentally disabled, and she had been living on her own for a long time, like in an assisted like living capacity, sort of in her own apartment, and she just needed help like shopping and managing her bills and stuff like that. Um, but she had a clicker. She had a clicker for her TV, and then over here, she's got her call light, just in case. She's got a peg tube too. Um, she can communicate and talk. She loves Garfield. She has like lots of Garfield stuff. I used to like to bring her Garfield stuff. Um, and she had been living on her own in that apartment for quite a while, and then she had a stroke, and bad stuff happened during the stroke and after the stroke. Like she lost oxygen to her brain. Um, she has a trach too, and a vent also. She's got a trach and a ventilator as well, um, and a peg tube. And so she's at a decreased capacity than she's ever been. Like even like even maybe as a young child, this is like the worst she's ever been. So she's always been very independent, even though been she's developmentally disabled, and she was great, great, great. She was really cool. Her father was very nice as well. We used to hang out. 12-hour shift is a long shift, and you know so sometimes these people would come and stay with their family members for hours and hours. And this was, like I said, a strange old hospital with a lot of strange ways. I'll tell you more about those strange ways in a second. I think that's next. Um, no, let's talk about one more person. Um, so anyway, yeah, Cheryl. Then there was this lady named Ernestine, and she was curled up in a ball. I mean, she was curled up in a ball. Her contractures were so bad that her body had like reverted back to the fetal position. Now, this wasn't because she was old, but this was because of a severe amount of brain trauma that had happened to her. She had been found, so it had been suspected, or I mean, I don't know if it's even suspected. It was, I guess it was just fact. Pretty sure this was all in her chart. Anyway, but she was, her eyes were always closed, even though she could be awake. Um, she just couldn't open her eyes. So she had been a prostitute, and she had been beaten and left for dead inside of a dumpster. And then she had been in that dumpster for maybe, I forget, 2 or 3 days before she was found by the police and stuff and the ambulances and everything. So she was anoxic for a long time. She had this brain trauma. So once again, and she was like a Jane Doe for a long time. I'm not even sure if her name, I mean, these names, Anyway, we're calling her Ernestine in this video. Anyway, she was a Jane Doe. She was a Jane Doe and total Jane Doe. No family, no nothing. No one ever came. And she was all like just like a, an, a, an, what? An island. A person alone. But it's so hard to explain where these people were. Because they were there. But then there were other places too inside of their minds. It's an interesting situation. Anyway, um, so they got her out of the dumpster. They took her to the ICU, and she survived, but then she was really persistently vegetative. So she had all these contractures, right? And of course she has a peg tube, because she can't swallow or eat or do anything. She's aphasic. She can't communicate. She doesn't even, I don't believe she could open her eyes, but you could see her eyes moving under her eyelids, like when you would go, when I would go in there and talk to her and do my thing, check her out, uh, check the machines out, give her meds. And, yeah. So I think so. All of these three women that I'm describing to you, all of them were seemed seemed happy. I know that this is a weird, horrible. It's you would think that would be the opposite. Where they're ready to die. They were almost dead, and yeah, they were. They were almost dead. They were all almost dead, and they all still had joy and happiness. Like Denise smiled every day that I went in there and talked to her and sang to her and hung out with her every time, all day. Cheryl, of course, she's always smiling and laughing, and she watched cartoons all day. Ernestine was asleep in maybe in the happiest moments of her childhood or her life, or maybe moments that were happier than any she had ever experienced in physical life on Earth. Maybe that's what was going on with her. So, this place, man, this place had this weird old school kitchen. This is one of the funniest stories of all about this joint. So, this place had this kitchen. It wasn't like it was a huge kitchen because it wasn't like it was a huge hospital, right? And so, this is the door. Here's what you're supposed to do. So, this is like the door to the kitchen that you're not supposed to go inside of, right? You don't have you're not allowed to go in there because you don't want to be disturbing the ladies. But the ladies are so nice. So the ladies that work in the kitchen here are all these ladies that have worked here for like 20 or 30 or 40 years, right? I'm not kidding. And there's a little string with a pen, and there's a piece of paper here. And on this piece of paper, they write every day what they're making, what they're cooking for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? But you can also make special requests. Like once you get used to what they cook here and know how things work, you can make I can go in here and I could just write my name, which used to be Dave. My Earth name was Dave. And I would write in here and I would write 3 eggs over easy, biscuits and gravy. And that's what I would get, 3 eggs over easy and biscuits and gravy. And it was all gratis. It was all included as part of working at this hospital. It didn't even, I don't believe this got taken out of your pay. It was, I don't think it did. It's hard to, I don't remember for sure, but if it did, it was like 285 per meal or something like that. I forget what it was. Maybe that was added in. Uh, I don't know. I was making really good money at this place, so I wasn't working there for money anyway. So I wasn't working at this place to. You're not doing this type of a job to get rich. I wasn't trying to make a bunch of money here. I was just trying to make enough money to make my car payment and pay my rent and pay my bills. That's all I was doing. And so you could write down whatever you wanted for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Remember what I said? 7 to 7. So I'm getting three, I'm getting three like kitchen cooked, home cooked meals every day by these little old ladies that grew to like me, right? And grew to get to know what I liked. And they would make stuff special for me. Like they would make this fresh, delicious bread pudding, right? From their leftovers from the whole deal. And here's the funniest part of this. This isn't just me. Every other employee is writing down Fred, Herb, Alice. They're all writing down what they want all day for to these ladies in here. And you're wondering, how the heck could these ladies in this kitchen in this hospital be cooking all day just for the employees? The answer is yes. The reason why the answer is yes is because look who the patients are. They can't eat. The patients can't eat, you guys. It's a subacute unit. Everybody's in a coma or unable to eat or on these are all death's beds, I guess is what you could call this situation here. So no one can eat except for us. Also, remember what I said? It's attached to an emergency room. So there's no patients. There's no inpatients in this building right here attached to this dining facility. This dining facility is only for us. It's only for the ambulance crews, the doctors that and nurses that work in the ER, and then the subacute unit. And we don't have any inpatients that eat solid food. And if we do, it's very few. It might be like a couple. It might be 3 or 4, 2 or 3. Really strange situation. One of my favorite patients working here at this place was this guy named Rusty. And he was something else. I don't even know what to tell you about him. He was from Oakland too. And he was also in prostitution. But he was a pimp. And he was really skinny. And he was really unsteady. See, because Rusty was able to ambulate. And he had stomach cancer and Agent Orange from Vietnam. He was a Vietnam vet. So me and him hit it off right off the bat. You're like, Meyer, how the heck did you know that he was a pimp? Well, it became evident to me that he was a pimp when my frickin' phone starts ringing off the hook like the second day that he's here. The second day that he's here, I keep getting these calls from these girls, these ladies. And it's not like they're calling to check up on Rusty. They're calling because they have problems and they need to talk to Rusty. And Rusty's fucked up, you guys. He's hooked up to bags and machines and he really wants to smoke bad. He smokes cools. And so you know how I am. I'm also cool. So this guy's on, you know, death's door, and his doctor, the guy that's giving me the orders and stuff, is a friend of mine. so he's going to let me take this guy out to smoke. The guy's almost dead, right? And so I take him out to smoke all the time, and so we get to become friends. And these ladies are calling, and they're having problems, and he's handling business over the phone. On death's door, he's still taking care of business with these ladies back in Oakland. Trying to. These are pajamas. He's wearing these hospital pajamas. That's what he was always wearing. He's got slippers, like hospital shoes. He had a real hard time. I had to really help. He was like 110 pounds or something. But we would go out here and we would smoke on these benches out here, and we would bullshit. And he would tell me stories, and he would sit here smoking a cool, sitting it here at this bench with me, and he was like in his probably his 60s, I guess, 60 something. I always thought it was funny that his name was Rusty. This was funny because I get word of this guy coming in before he shows up, and I see his name, and I can see that his first name is Rusty. And when you meet a person named Rusty, you think that they're going to be maybe a redheaded guy, right? This is a black guy. I don't I don't know if I've been telling you that, but Rusty is a black man. He is a black pimp from Oakland, and the women that are calling me on the phone are also black women, because I can tell by the way that they they talk to me on the phone. Um, they're all very nice, and eventually they all start coming, and they're to visit, and they're also very nice and cool, and a lot of people would bring me food and stuff because I'd be there all day. But this place was out in the boonies, and where we would sit there and smoke on this old park bench was like right next to a cow pasture. And I love cows because I kind of grew up around them. And so these cows, or I did grow up around them, would be right there. And anytime people come and stay any place for any amount of time, depending on the cow, I guess, or whatever, or the rancher, but a lot of cows, as long as you're there for any amount of time, they all come over, and come closer and get close to the fence to watch to see what we're doing. And so that was kind of a nice thing that we would do throughout the day. I would take him out to smoke, maybe 3 or 4 times a day. We would go out there and see the cows and bullshit. And I used to get invited to these people's funerals, and I never went to one. Um, I was invited to Rusty's funeral, and I didn't go. I was invited to Cheryl's funeral, and I didn't go. And I should, well, no. So I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to. Yeah, it didn't feel right for me. It was a difficult job enough as it was. So it would have made it even more difficult for me to personalize this job and make it a part of what I was trying to keep a separate life, because this can become all encompassing, especially when you're working those hours that I just described, and you're able to eat this food and hang out with your buddy and smoke cools and talk about bullshit about the army. That's what we were talking about. We were talking about the army, and we were talking about bitches. You would tell me all about bitches. One time, towards the end, and like they thought that he was going to die any day now. It's going to be any day now. It's going to be any day now, right? And he really thought it was going to be any day now, Dave. It's going to be any day now. And anyway, I guess, what do you call it? Like his main girl, she came, and she came for like a whole day, and and I gave them like privacy. I set it up so no one's gonna go in that room and mess with them, and so that they could, whatever, if they were gonna be intimate, or if they wanted to just have a lengthy amount of time together without being bothered or bugged. I wanted to make that possible for him and her. And I can remember their doors closed, and I wheeled by there with my cart, and playing really loud on on a little boombox that he had was that song by what was the name of that beautiful singer that died? Whitney Houston. I will always love you. Yeah. So that's like I don't even like this song. Never liked this song. Just sounded like background music to me. But uh, because Rusty and his girl were listening to it that day, yeah, I'll always love that song now.